There are multiple types of email signature software to choose from. There's distributed software and centralized software. So distributed software can be installed on any machine in your network, a PC or a server. And from there, it distributes signatures to the program you're using to send email, to Outlook. So as you're writing your email, you can see the signature underneath. Now, centralized software works differently. You type your message, and then as it's processed by the email server, then it's added. So that means that you can't see it as you're typing, but it can be added to email from any device. Now, I want to demonstrate both for you guys because Exclaimer provides both types of software. Exclaimer Signature Manager is our distributed option working with Outlook, and Exclaimer Mail Disclaimers is our centralized option working with Exchange. Don't be distracted by the names. They both do signatures and disclaimers. The difference is the way that they do them. So we'll start off with Signature Manager in this demonstration because Mail Disclaimers makes a little bit more sense once you know email signature software a little better. Let's get started. Now, this is an example email signature here in Outlook provided by Signature Manager. That's the software working directly with Outlook. Now, in this example, we're imagining that this company is an IT reseller. So they're reselling software and hardware, and the imaginary Brad Shepard that works in this company is a client manager in the sales department. So he's advising customers on which software, which hardware is going to be best for them. And as we can see here in the signature, he's a Microsoft certified professional. And we actually can get a lot of information from his contact details here. We know he's a client manager, we know he's in sales, but we still know that he's certified to provide that service. We also can see that we can click this and follow Data Plus on Twitter. And down here underneath, we've got a tweet from their Twitter feed just to entice people to start following them and interacting with them on social media. And then underneath, there's a little campaign banner promoting their webinar just to guide them through various products. So I've also got a much simpler reply version, which I can use if I want. Here it is, nice, no frills, and that'll be automatically used when I open a reply message. And then, also interestingly, I have a secondary version of that signature. So here, it's showing I'm Microsoft certified because that's going to come up a lot. But in some cases, people want to use Oracle software. So in those instances, I'm going to use the Oracle version of this signature to show that I'm Oracle certified. I don't want both on there because it would break my design a little bit, but instead I'm going to have different versions to use the best one in each context. So let's take a look at how I put this together in Signature Manager. So this was a client-facing signature, but not every department is going to be the same. In here, I have multiple policies for the different types of roles in my organization. So I've got this sales signature. That's the one I had, and you saw it there. But the marketing signature is different. So they aren't technically certified to recommend different products, but instead they've got a different certification on their signature. The company was Innovation Awards shortlisted. That's communicating the type of quality and how established and respectable the organization is. So they need that in their version. So I've got separate policies for the separate departments. Now, this is their default signature for new messages in Outlook, just like it is, say, for the sales team. However, I also want to have a reply version of my signature. And so here in the Options tab, this is set to be the default signature for replies and forwards in Outlook. So that means that I can have maybe this fuller, more complete version on the initial message, but on replies, I can have this nice, simple, understated copy. So I also have this secondary signature, which I showed you a moment ago. Interestingly, this isn't the default for new messages or replies. It's just an option. It can be included if needed, but we're not going to add it as a default because remember, it was just a secondary signature. Now, how have I differentiated between the different departments here? If I go into this Conditions tab, this is only adding the signature if the user is a member of an Active Directory group, specifically sales. Same thing here with this marketing signature. So here in Conditions, this is only being added if the user is a member of the Active Directory group, marketing. Now, what if you're not in one of those? Well, in that case, we don't really need that much extra content, so we just have this plain basic signature here, just like the reply version. So interestingly, this doesn't have conditions. Outlook user can be anyone, It's that it's excluding certain users. So if you're in marketing or sales, because of course you have these signatures, this will not be applied to your emails. Now, interestingly, because it's identical to the reply version, this is the default for both replies and new messages in Outlook. So, you don't have to, by the way, create these templates from scratch. You can just select one from our template library and swap in your own company logo and use one of these. But you can, if you want, you can create it from scratch right in the editor. So for example, if I click edit up here, we can see I've got a company logo, I've got some contact details, and these fields will be automatically completed for each user. So I can see how they look, say for this example user, Karen Green. I can see how they look for myself. I can see how they look for all sorts of people in my organization, just to make sure that they fit with all the longer job titles and names perhaps. And if I need to, I can edit it directly in the source HTML, if I know HTML that well. So I can close this. But you'll recall that this wasn't the entirety of my signature. I also had some extra content, like this campaign banner and this social media feed. These are being governed by these campaign policies so that we can add a little bit of extra content on using a separate policy and separate rules. So let me show you why that's advantageous. First of all, if I go into our October banner, now what I've done here is I have this additional banner in here and in this image. And in this date range feature, I've set that this is only going to appear between these two dates because we're only holding these webinars during that month. And if I click on edit, what I can do is I can preview this. And when I click on it, you'll see that it goes through to the URL as normal, but afterwards, we have this email address added. So that in Google Analytics, we can track this and track whose email signature generated this traffic. And when someone clicks on another page, goes to visit something else, we can see that all that traffic was generated by this particular user's email signature. So if I close that, I can show you how I put that together. So in here, I have my email signature banner. Now I have the image. And what I've done is I've hyperlinked it, and in the source view, I've added in this contact detail field so that that's going to be automatically completed for each user. So if I click preview here, then I can see that if I type in, say, a different user's name, like my own, and click apply, that same page we loaded isn't going to end with Karen's email address. Instead, it'll end with mine. So if I close that and I type in, say, another colleague's name and click apply, when I click on this, as you'd expect, it ends instead with his email address. So I can differentiate between the two naturally and seamlessly within Google Analytics. So let's close this. Let's take a look at how all this logic fits together in the Policy Tester. So if I go down here to Policy Tester, and I just go and click Run Test. Now, it's going to run this test with me as the user, and this as the test date, because remember, we had some date-sensitive rules set up earlier. So I'll click Run Test. And now it's only listing the signatures that I am applied to. So, for example, I am only seeing signature sales, sales signature secondary, and the reply signature. Because I'm not in marketing and this one excludes me, we are not going to look at those. Instead, it's only going to show me the relevant policies. So, starting with this primary policy here, it starts off looking exactly as I designed it. We've got it just straightforward in there, contact details, certification, and social media link. But underneath, we have all these campaign policies. So if I scroll down, we can see that here, this date pattern doesn't apply in this rolling banner policy because it's not in this particular date range. Same thing for that next policy. And then here, the date range does apply. Yes, it is between these dates. So that means that I can decide exactly when different banners appear, and I can seamlessly switch from one to the next. So as soon as one stops, the other one can start being triggered. It's not like I have to manually go in here at midnight and switch them over or something. So then it's asking if this condition does apply. If, for example, I'm a member of sales, and yes, I am. So if I scroll down a little further, it applies its Outlook campaign, as it says. It's added this banner under here. And if I cancel that, and then in here, it's asking whether indeed I'm in marketing or it's sales. And because yes, I am, it's going to now add this Twitter feed policy. So altogether, we see it almost complete. So down at the very bottom, I can see it here with everything I need in it. Logo, contact details, banner, social media feed, and then over a little bit, those same certification and follow buttons that I showed you a moment ago. So, same thing over here for my other secondary sales signature. So it starts off looking exactly as I designed it, and then as we go down, it's having content added to it by each individual campaign policy. Nice. Now, just to compare that with that reply signature. So instead, what we have here is it just starts off plain, no additional content because that's how this template was designed. And then in here, it's going to skip each one of these policies, as you can see, because of course, it has been set to have no campaign or disclaimers added to it. So here in the policy tester, we get the 3 signatures I showed you at the beginning. I get my primary signature, and then of course the secondary signature with the same banner content underneath, and then this reply signature, which is nice and plain and straightforward. Great. Now, I mentioned in the presentation that you could also control fonts and formatting. So in here, for example, this is my plain font policy. This isn't controlling signatures. This is controlling the actual formatting of the message. So if I go here in Outlook options, you can see what I've selected. So this font has been restricted to Arial typeface, size 10, and the color has to be black. And then in replies, it's the same, except for it's a navy colored font, as usually happens in Outlook, just to keep people from using, say, Comic Sans or anything goofy. Now, I've also said that it's going to remove all previous existing signatures. So that means that people can't tamper with my design or try and create their own signatures. This is automatically going to overwrite them all. And it can do the same for stationery, which would prevent things like Outlook themes and backgrounds, which can sometimes look a little unprofessional and unpleasant. And just like in my other policies, I can use conditions, exceptions, and date ranges to decide exactly who gets this and when. Now, that was Exclaimer Signature Manager. Let's go over and take a look at Exclaimer Mail Disclaimers. So in here, I can go to my smartphone policy. So you'll notice, first of all, that this template is very, very similar to that reply policy that I showed you earlier. In fact, it's identical. So in this case, what this is doing is, this is adding this content, which you saw in that reply version. Great. But in this case, it's going to add it to any message when a disclaimer isn't already present. So what that means is it's going to detect when an email is blank, it doesn't have a signature on it, and add this one. So if I'm emailing from a smartphone, of course, or from a tablet or any device that isn't using Outlook that would have added those other signatures I showed you, this is going to catch that and add on this signature. So it's the simple, nice reply one because we might be typing up on, say, a narrow smartphone, and what we can do here is guarantee that there's always a high quality, brand conformant signature on every message. Now, it's also worth pointing out quickly that we can use additional conditions in Exclaimer Mail Disclaimers. So before we had conditions based on the user, but here we can add in things based on the sender, the recipient, which is slightly different. So I could maybe, if I wanted, have a policy just for certain recipients. A great example might be, instead of showing you this smartphone policy, this internal policy. So in here, I've got, say, staff picture and some of their internal details that are relevant. So here in conditions, I'm only going to add this signature when the sender is inside my organization and the recipient is inside my organization. Now, let's take a look at the template I've made for this internal signature, because I've done some interesting things with the contact details. So here we have display name, their internal extension, their IP phone, and then of course the office that they work in. So if I hit preview and I say, type in my colleague Elizabeth's name, we can see she has all the details. Display name, her internal extension, the office that she works in, perfect. But my colleague Taylor, I know for a fact, doesn't have an internal extension. He's generally working out on the road, so we haven't given him an internal extension because he's so rarely at his desk in the office. So if I hit apply, it's hidden that internal extension field. So instead we just see Taylor, we see office, but there's no unusual blank space next to extension. So if I click design here, let me show you how I put that together. So actually, let's start from scratch. Let me grab this. We'll just delete it all. First thing I want to do is insert an HTML table. That's just to hold everything in place. Then I will stick in the thumbnail photo that you saw there, profile picture. So I'll go up to fields and I'll select AD pictures and thumbnail photo. So it'll pull it directly from the Active Directory. Great. Now, if I click preview, I can see the photo in there for Taylor. I could probably see it for Elizabeth too if I wanted. Great. So now what I want to do is split this particular row so that I can have those multiple rows for contact details you saw previously. So I'll right click, select split, and select vertical in this case rather than horizontal. That way I can have these multiple rows you saw earlier. So now let's start putting in these contact details. So I'll go to message sender, go to general, hit display name, and I'm just going to work my way down that way. Now here I'm going to add in the prefix that you saw, ext, and then I will select hide if blank. Now, if I leave it as it is and I hit preview, for some users it will just be left blank. So for example, Taylor still has it appear even though he doesn't have an IP phone. Whoops. Whereas, say, for my colleague Walt, his does, so that's fine. What we want to do here is use this hide if blank feature and set it to true so that if someone doesn't have that particular contact detail, we don't get that annoying blank space that we saw earlier. Great. So again, oops. Let's just add in another field. Nice. So if I hit preview, I can see it for Taylor. I can see it, say, for my colleague Walt. Nice. I can maybe see it for me. Great. So that's how you can put it together if you so choose, though as I said earlier, you have a full template library to choose from. So just to quickly mention it, now you saw in here how we pretty much had all the 6 C's: conforming with the logo, contact details, connecting with social media, certification. We've got the communicating campaign banner. We've got more social media down here. However, where's the disclaimer? Now, what I've done is I have it being added at the server level. So here, instead, what we're doing is adding the disclaimer as it passes through Exchange. So instead of it appearing under every single message I write, it's going to appear once down at the very bottom of the email trail. So what I have here is, in mail disclaimers, I have these original message above reply separator and original message below reply, which means that, for example, if I wanted, I could set it so that content appears not underneath my most recent message, say this is the one that I've written, but instead appears down here at the very, very bottom. So instead of adding it in Outlook, I've added it using Exchange so that I can have a little bit more flexibility. And on top of that, I have the ability to ensure that multiple disclaimers are not added. Great. So those were our two signature products in a nutshell, really. Now, back into the presentation to explain a few things that aren't necessarily apparent as you go through a demonstration. So in any organization, we would actually see room for both products. Signature Manager to let you see the signature as you type and choose which one you want to use as you go, and then Mail Disclaimers to cover smartphone use, to add those signatures when you are emailing from an iPhone or a BlackBerry or another mobile device. Now, you could also have the different types of software control different components in the signature. Say, have Signature Manager cover some of the content that you want people to have a little choice over or to see as they're typing the message, like the campaign banner, like the contact details. And also, Mail Disclaimers to cover the content you want to automatically add, like the mail disclaimer, and then also any social media content that you want to have updated in real time as soon as it goes live. So, for example, a feed from a recent social media site. So, thanks a lot for watching and have a great day.